I want to introduce to you Congressman Mark Green. He was born on a dirt road in Mississippi, and through the mercy and the grace of God and a lot of hard work, he's a West Point graduate. He's a major in the United States Army. Currently, he's serving in the U.S. Congress, representing the 7th District of Tennessee. But above all of that, he's a man of faith, a man of purpose, and a man of character. He has stood watch on our behalf in distant places, and now he's standing watch on our behalf in Washington, D.C. Help me welcome, I hope you enjoy getting to know Congressman Mark Green. Congressman Green, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
It's an honor. You serve Tennessee's 7th District.
Yes, sir.
And we thank you for your leadership on behalf of our state and in our nation. Now, I happen to know a little bit of your story. You didn't start out in Washington, D.C. Your life had a little bit more of a humble beginning. Can you talk about that just a second?
Yeah, I grew up on a dirt road in Mississippi. My dad, when I left for West Point, became a pastor. He had lost his arm when I was in first grade. The company he worked for said, "You're half a man, we're going to pay you half a salary." So my one-armed dad and I would roof houses, and Dad would start literally every nail with the palm of his hand because there were no nail guns back then. And that's how we paid for the bills. I figured if I was going to pay for college, I had to go in the Army, and went to West Point. So that's how it all started.
Well, if you have to go to college, West Point's not a bad place.
It's not a bad place to go. No, I had a great experience.
So then you served in the Army.
Yep, did that for 24 years if you count the academy and the time that I was in the reserves going to medical school. Was a special operations, flight surgeon for our premier special ops unit. I was also an infantry officer and a ranger before I went to med school. Had an amazing experience in the Army. I got to work for and serve alongside some of our nation's greatest heroes. So it was humbling, to use your words.
Well, thank you for that. I know a little bit of your backstory, and you told me that your mom initiated a fasting event when they were praying for the capture of Saddam Hussein. Can you tell them that?
Sure. So Mom and Dad knew that I was on the task force that was hunting for Saddam. And so my dad sent a letter out to all the pastors in his, I think the Southern Baptists call it convention, and asked them to fast and pray on a certain day. And then about 3 or 4 days later, we caught Saddam Hussein. And the prayer was to catch Saddam Hussein, fast and pray. Dad thought naively that I'd come home. And Mom added to her prayer, of course, if God, it be your will, let Mark be a part of it. And then I'm walking into the cell of the captured king of Babylon. Spent 6 hours interviewing him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's time to fast and pray for our nation again.
I would say so. The nation's struggling.
It is.
It's a real challenge between, a values-based fixed concept of moral right. That's the challenge. There are forces in the country who want a moral relativity where certain elites get to decide what's right and wrong. And we need to get back to faith. And
that's where a biblical worldview makes so much difference.
Right.
Well, this is a Veterans Day celebration, really, and talking about for whom honor is due. And I think we've lost sight of that. And it grieves me that we're currently using the military as some sort of a grand social experiment. And I mean, that's your life story and such an important part of your training.
Sure.
Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think the woke stuff that's taken over in the military is really damaging readiness. And you can look at the various services where wokeness has been happening longer or is stronger. For example, in the most recent Heritage report, the Air Force was very weak, and they've been very woke for a long time. The Army marginal, meaning, and I think less woke. And it's not just because I served in the Army, by the way, Pastor. It's
somebody in the Army thinks the Air Force is weak. I'm shocked at that.
The Marine Corps actually was scored as strong, and they've narrowed the focus of their mission set, and they've focused on quality. So they've made some good decisions.
But we've got to have the courage to use our voices and not just abandon those men and women who are willing to serve.
That's for sure. Martin Luther King, I think, said it best. We should judge people on the content of our character, not the color of our skin, not our political ideology. That shouldn't determine a promotion. The color of our skin shouldn't determine a promotion. And we want diversity in the military, right?
Sure.
We do, and we should empower people of every ethnicity to be successful in the military. That's what diversity is. But when you say we're going to put someone in a job who, just because of the color of their skin, you're suddenly saying that competence and the best person for the job counts second. And if we do that, then we've got a woke military and we're destroying readiness.
I think the goal of the military is to win wars.
It should be to win wars, kill people, and break things.
And if we impede that with an equity agenda so that everybody participating in the game gets an equal outcome, we make all of ourselves more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's not okay.
No, that's not okay. And you look at the vaccine mandate, too, in terms of its impact on readiness. And this is a woke thing. I mean, because people in their 18 to 25, 30 range that are primarily fighting our wars are not, very minimal impact from the virus. But the vaccine mandate has taken out, if you do 62,000 National Guardsmen and 15,000 missed recruiting goals, that's 77,000 the force has been attrited just by the vaccine mandate. And we know that COVID would never have taken that many people out. And they did it all in the goal of readiness, right? We got to be ready. So let's do the vaccine. Well, they've made the military far less ready because of the mandate.
The byline was to follow the science. Now, again, you're ahead of me. You're a physician and I'm a preacher, but the science, in my understanding, would be the same in Tennessee or California or Pennsylvania. It wouldn't change at a state line because of some governor's edict. And we weren't following the science, and the scientists weren't using their voices. We're going to have more courage if our nation's going to find a better future.
Yeah. There were a lot of mistakes made in the science of it that, as you mentioned it. Closing the schools down for a population that had, and every lost child is a tragedy, but an infinitely smaller amount. And look at the reports that are coming out now on school performance and how our entire nation is falling behind because of the shutdowns. We did far more harm. Increased suicides and increased visits to the ER. Increased visits to the ER amongst young women, teenage women, 45%. For behavioral health issues, all because of that close down of the schools. And so, we have to put kids ahead of politics. And the teachers' unions did not do that. The teachers' unions put themselves and their own politics ahead of the students.
I think one of the ways of understanding how far in the weeds we've walked is the ideologies that are trying to capture the heart and soul of our nation don't lead with people. They lead with the acquisition of power.
That's exactly right.
And when we see that in the military, it's particularly egregious to me. Those young men and women that put themselves in harm's way and run towards danger so that we can sleep well at night, to use them either as a science experiment or an ideological experiment is beyond reprehensible. It's evil.
Sure.
And we can't tolerate that.
Yeah.
They need our support.
America's sons and daughters deserve the best equipment, the best training, the best doctrine, and the best leaders. How we pick our leaders, it's just as important as how we pick our equipment.
And I'm sure there's people that are listening that have been influenced by they've heard chatter that the military is not good, or there's bad actors in the military. There's bad actors in the ministry.
Sure.
But it doesn't make ministry irrelevant. So what would you say on behalf of those brave young men and women who serve our nation?
Our military is incredibly capable. And just because that a couple of rating agencies have identified problems, we still have an incredibly capable military because of the Americans, the sons and daughters of this great country who are in that service or in the Air Force or in the Navy or wherever, giving their all and willing to sacrifice for this country. So yeah, we are talking about some issues, but in the end, it's still an amazing force.
So is it safe to say you're proud of America?
I love our country. And it's interesting, you talk about our veterans. We take an oath not to protect the people. We take an oath not to protect the geography or the flag. We take an oath when you join the military to defend the Constitution of the United States, the idea of
What
America.
a thought.
The idea of America. And I love that about our oath.
Well, now you're back into my territory because the idea of America did emerge from a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
That is an unmistakable part of our heritage and the founder's message and our founding doctrines. But every generation has to defend that. The fact that our grandparents had faith or our parents had faith, that's nice, but the really relevant question today is about the condition of our heart.
Yeah.
Congressman, you lead with your faith and your courage and your boldness.
Thanks, brother.
I thank you for that. You're willing to stand on the front lines and take some of those ugly labels.
Yeah, I do get beat up because of my faith, but My faith informs my decision making, and people should know where it comes from. And I do believe our founding was about this. If you're going to have freedom, you have to have a virtuous society.
Amen.
To have a virtuous society, you have to have a faith or a fixed concept of moral right and wrong. And to have that, of course, you have to have freedom, to have faith, right?
Yeah.
So it's that Os Guinness golden triangle that is critical, but being attacked by people in our country every day now.
Well, I don't believe God is finished with you yet, and I don't believe he's finished with our nation yet. And with his help, we will not stop.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Amen to that.